Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is part 10 of Heavy Training. Enjoy. She was so focused on following the prints on the ground that she forgot to stop and look at the first few animals. You didn't want to tell her that the prints were just there to show people where to go because you felt like she was really enjoying following them for some reason. She would stop and look at some of the creatures, but then would go straight back to following the prints, and you and Aizawa kept stealing small glances at each other as the day moved along. This isn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be, you thought as Aizawa stopped you all to look at some lines. I like this. I feel comfortable with this. I like Aizawa being here, and I love Eri. She really makes me happy. You looked down at her as she peered over the fence to see the lines in the pen below, her little fingers gripping the top of the brick fencing lightly. Can you see? You asked her. She looked up at you with a sad look in her eye and shook her head slowly. Up we go, Aizawa suddenly said, and reached his hands under her arms and lifted her up and sat her on his shoulders. She seemed to react naturally to this manoeuvre and scrunched her little fingers into his unruly hair to hold on as her eyes scanned down into the pen below. Her whole countenance brightened when she saw the lines clearly. Oh! She exclaimed brightly, a small smile pulling at her lips. Your eyes lit up and you beamed. That was her first small smile. What progress! There's a mummy, a daddy, and a baby one, she said, pointing down to the pen. Just like us. Aizawa looked at you, and you smiled bashfully back at him. Yes, just like us, you replied to her, but kept your eyes locked with his. He turned his head a little more to look at you more clearly, and you felt like that small movement was asking, Are you saying yes? So you nodded to his unasked question. Yes, you said again. Yeah, I want this. A look of relief washed over his face, and a small smile pulled at his lips too. I'm glad to hear it, he said softly. Both your attentions went back to Eri then, who was still engrossed in the lions, and you had to ask her a few questions about them, and then answer a few of her questions too, feeling lighter in your heart. I guess we don't have to rush this, you thought as Aizawa lifted her down off his shoulders, and she took your hand again, and then reached for his. We can take it slow. Off you started walking again with Eri following the yellow paw prints. It was while you were headed towards the next exhibit that a call came over the speakers. Greetings, everyone! The red pandas are getting hungry. It's time for lunch. If you have a red band on your wrist, that means you can help feed our little bears. Check your wrists and then ask Mum or Dad if it's okay to come and help with lunchtime. See you real soon. And then the speaker switched back to play the happy little Zooland jingle in the background. Oh, Eri exclaimed, looking at her band. I have a red one. This is red, isn't it? She asked, letting go of Aizawa's hand to tug on her band a little to show it to you. Yes, you're right, that's red. Would you like to feed the red pandas? They're very cute, you said with a smile as you crouched down to talk to her better. Do they make the yellow footprints? She asked innocently. Sorry? You asked, not understanding what she was saying. These ones, she said, pointing to the yellow painted prints on the ground. Oh, those. No, they don't. You warred with yourself about whether or not to tell her that they were painted on to show people where to go or not. I would really like to meet the animal that makes these footprints, she said, looking longingly after them. You looked back to Aizawa for help, and he stepped forwards. We'll find the animal later, he said, plopping a hand down on her head. But for now, do you want to feed the red pandas? She looked up at him from under his hand and nodded eagerly. Okay, let's go, he said, gesturing for you to come along as well. You gave him a curious look, and when Eri was walking on the other side of him, holding his hand, you snuck your question in quietly. How are you going to cover for the prince? You asked, keeping your mouth close to his ear. He turned his head so that he could whisper back to you, his cheek brushing yours. Trust me on this one, he breathed. You nodded, body flooding with goosebumps once again. How did he do that? Eri was delighted to be able to feed the red pandas, and you stood on the outside of the pen and took pictures of her with Aizawa as they made sure to feed all the pandas in the enclosure. She looked so happy in there with him, and he looked like the model dad, just keeping close and stepping in when she needed help with anything. Yeah, I really do want this, you thought with a smile as you looked down at the photos on your phone while Aizawa and Eri were preparing to come back out of the pen. Once back outside, Eri still wanted to watch the pandas through the glass, so you all stood there a little longer. We don't have to rush this, Aizawa whispered lowly in your ear. My apologies for making this appear to be an instant decision. No, it's okay, you whispered back. I was just thinking the same thing. We can take our time and work on it slowly. He nodded, Your faces very close together, and for a second you hesitated on whether or not to kiss him, but thought it best not to since you were both out in public. Eri's little voice interrupted, and you quickly pulled back and looked down at her. Yes, Eri? You asked a little sheepishly. She was looking at you, and then at Aizawa, then back to you again. Oh, no, nothing, she said shyly, and then took your hand while looking down. You didn't want to pry, but it looked like she was shy about asking you something, and you hoped that maybe later on she would ask you the question. It had been a fair few hours at the zoo now, and you'd seen most, if not all, of the animals at the place. It's been a big day, Aizawa said to you both as you walked from the furthest end of the zoo. But a fun one, you said with a smile, and a small squeeze to Eri's hand. Yes, she said happily. Let's have dinner here, and then head home, he offered, gesturing to a cafe that was overlooking the giraffe enclosure. A lot of people were just heading for the gates, so it wasn't busy in there. It was relatively peaceful and quiet, and the setting sun was creating all kinds of beautiful colours in the sky as you entered and walked over to the open end that was overlooking the giraffes. Oh, how pretty, you commented as you took a seat at one of the tables there. Aizawa sat down and helped Eri onto her seat, and then you all picked up a menu each. Eri had hers upside down, which you thought was very cute. She was more intent on copying you and Aizawa than actually reading the words on it. After a short discussion on what was going to be eaten, Aizawa got up to order and left you with Eri. Are you having a good day today? You asked her. Yes, because you and Aizawa are here and she looked down bashfully. And you are loving, I think. Oh, little Eri. Stay tuned for next week. It'll be the final part of heavy training. Will Aizawa propose? He might not. Who knows? You'll have to wait and see. See you then.